Evening. Since, as Levi just mentioned, this week, Sunday, was the yahrzeit of my father, Zechrona Livracha, so I'll dedicate this week's shiur as a yahrzeit shiur in his memory and a tribute to his soul in connection to his third yahrzeit, Chaf Iyar, Tavshin Samach Ches. I'll also conclude the shiur and share a moving story about him. Since I'm dedicating this shiur as a yahrzeit shiur, so we're going to discuss this evening a theme that is connected to the journey of a soul through the world, through earth, from birth until the moment that the soul passes away, a moment which is commemorated each year again at the yahrzeit. And the theme that is reflected particularly in this season between Pesach and Shavuos, when we have the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer, of counting the Omer. And here we will have another powerful example of how often one halacha and one dispute in halacha is not just an argument or a discussion on a particular specific law, but rather the microcosm reflects the macrocosm, is a truth in halacha and Torah as well. That every single individual halacha often encompasses within itself reflections of complete perspectives and Weltanschauungs that really encompass the totality of life or major components of life and of the human experience. This method of learning was particularly prevalent in the writings of the Rogatchover, Gaon Reb Yosef Rosen, as well as in the writings and talks of the Rebbe, who once said about himself that he attempts to follow in many ways the path of the Rogatchover as far as learning, also emphasized continuously how often one particular detail reflects within itself and mirrors fundamental concepts in Judaism and in life in general. And tonight we will have another example for this. Concerning the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, which we are right now in the midst of, between Pesach and Shavuos, there is a major argument, a famous argument between two of the Gaonim, the Baal Halachas Gedolos, the Bahag, and Rav Hai Gaon. Just a brief biographical comment. The Sefer Bahag, Sefer Halachas Gedolos, was authored by Reb Shimon Kaira in the year 741 in the secular calendar, 741 after the Common Era, or in our calendar, Daled Alafim Tov Kuf Aleph, 4,501 since creation. Reb Shimon Kaira authored the Sefer Halachas Gedolos, living in the second generation of the Gaonim. Thus he is known in his acronym as the Bahag, the Baal Halachas Gedolos, the author, the master of the book Halachas Gedolos, Great Laws. Rav Hai Gaon lived more than 200 years after the Bahag. He was born in 939 in the secular calendar, Daled Alafim Tov Reish Tzadik Tes, which is 4,699. He's actually considered the last one in the chain of the Gaonim. He was the son of Reb Shreira Gaon. Rav Hai Gaon lived 99 years. And he has a major argument with the Bahag when it comes to the issue of Sfiras HaOmer. The question occurs, what happens if somebody forgets one night to count the Omer. They forget. Or they willingly did not count the Omer. For whatever reason, they did not count the Omer one night. Can they continue counting the Omer the following night? Say you forgot night number 7. Can you count night number 8? Can you make a blessing? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivonu al sfiras ha'omer. The Baal Halachas Doilas, the Bahag holds you can't. There's no mitzvah anymore. The mitzvah is to count 49 days, beginning with the second day of Pesach, 49-day count, and the 50th day is Shavuos. The moment you missed one night, you don't have the mitzvah anymore. Even if you want to count the next night, we're sorry, the mitzvah was 49 days. You missed a night, there's no mitzvah any longer. So there's no point, it's useless to count the next night because you won't be fulfilling any mitzvah because you missed one night. You missed a day of Sfira. Thus, you certainly can't make a blessing. It would be a bracha levatala. It would be a bracha in vain. You can't say, Asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivonu al sfiras ha'omer, blessed are you, God, who commanded us the mitzvah of Sfira. You're not doing a mitzvah. If you pick up a rock and you throw it, you're going to say, Baruch atah Asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivonu al zrika 7. It's a bracha levatala. There's no such a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah to count number 8 if you didn't count number 7. You missed the mitzvah, one mitzvah, 49 days. Let's take an example. Comes Sukkot. There's a mitzvah to take Daled Minim, Lulav, Esrog, Hadas, Arava. If you don't have an Esrog, you don't have a Hadas, you don't have a Lulav, you can't make a blessing. Why not? Because it's one mitzvah that's comprised of 4 species. The moment you're lacking one of the 4, you don't have the mitzvah anymore. You can't make a blessing. Let's say you have a talis cotton or a talis and you don't have tzitzis on one of the corners. You can't make a blessing because you have tzitzis on 3 corners. The mitzvah is to have tzitzis on all 4 corners of the garment. You don't have tzitzis on one of the 4 corners, you don't have the mitzvah. We're sorry. Sfiras ha'omer says the Bahag needs you to count every single day of the 49 days, or every single night of the 49 days. You missed a night, there's no mitzvah anymore. This is the opinion of the Bahag. Reb Haigon argues, Reb Haigon holds, no. The 49 days of Sfiras ha'omer constitute 49 separate mitzvahs. Each night is a distinct mitzvah. If you missed one night, you missed a mitzvah, but next night there's no reason not to resume the counting because it's a new mitzvah. For example, let's say a person didn't daven on Sunday. You're going to say, don't daven on Monday because you didn't daven on Sunday. What's the connection? You didn't daven on Sunday, it wasn't good, but you didn't. Now Monday, you have to daven. Person didn't put on tefillin one day, chas v'shalom. The next day, they shouldn't put on tefillin. It's a separate mitzvah. Sunday is one mitzvah, Monday is another mitzvah. Every day is a separate mitzvah to put on tefillin, to daven. Just because a person missed one day does not exonerate him, does not exempt him from resuming the mitzvah the next day with a blessing. So the Reb Haigon holds that even if you forget one day of Sfira, the next day you should count with a blessing. The Alter Rebbe, in his Shulchan Aruch in Hilchas Pesach, Siman Tov Pei Tes, Seif Chav Gimel and Chav Dalet, brings this argument between the Bahag and Reb Haigon. I will quote him. The Alter Rebbe says, there is one opinion that if you forget to count one night, you don't have to count at all any other nights. Why? Because the moment you forfeited one day, you forfeited, you lost from the mitzvah of Sfiras ha'omer completely. Shenemar, because the verse says, Tmima is tiyena. It says, Sheva Shabbos is Tmima is tiyena. You should count from the day they bring the Karban Omer 7 complete weeks, and you don't have 7 complete weeks because you missed the night. So you lost the mitzvah, so you don't have any reason to count the next night. V'yesh cholkin, there are those who argue, v'yoimrim, they hold, this is Reb Haigon, shetzarich lisper b'shar kol haleilos. You have to count on the other nights. Why? Because each night is an independent mitzvah. And the 49 mitzvahs are not dependent one on another. They are not interconnected and interlinked to the point where they are dependent one upon the other. Each one is independent. Hence, I forgot the mitzvah on night 7. There's no reason. Night 8, I shouldn't fulfill a mitzvah. This is the shit of Rabbi God. The Tur in these halachas and Siman Tov Peitas quotes the opinion of the Bahag. The Bahag says it in Hilchas Menachos, Tov Kuf Hamid Zayin Hamid Gimel. The shita that if you forget one night, it's over. You have no reason to count again. The Tur also brings the second opinion in the name of Rabbeinu Yoina, but the originator of this opinion is Rabbi Gon. The second opinion is also brought in Tosfos Menachos Daf Samach Vav in Rosh and Masechta Pesachim Perek Yud. What's the halacha? Le'inyan halacha, says the Alter Rebbe, our custom is to count the other nights without a blessing. Why should we count the other nights without a blessing? Because Safek bracha is lahak. Whenever we have a doubt in brachas, we go according to the lenient opinion, not to make the bracha. Since if you forget one night, it comes the next night, we have two opinions. The Bahag holds you're not allowed to make a blessing. Rav Hai Gaon holds you have to make a blessing. The Balalachas Gdoilas holds you don't have to make a blessing and there's no point to count. It's futile, it's vain. You're not doing anything, you're not accomplishing anything if you count. Rav Hai Gaon holds no, you have to count with a bracha. So we have a dispute. What do? So the custom is, the halach is, we reconcile the two opinions, but saying Safek brachas lahakam. So we count, even if we forgot one night, like Rav Hai Gaon, to fulfill the mitzvah according to Rav Hai Gaon. But since according to the Bahag it would be a bracha levatala, Safek bracha is lahakel, don't make it. So we count, but we count without a bracha. And that's the minig, that's the Jewish custom. If somebody forgets a night of Sfira, they count the next night, but without a bracha. And the following nights as well, they count without a bracha. How does everybody learn and understand the logic behind the argument? It seems straightforward. According to the Bahag, the mitzvah of Sfira Sa'omer is one mitzvah that continues for 49 days. According to Rabbi Hai Gaon, it's 49 separate mitzvahs. Hence, according to the Bahag, it's one mitzvah that encompasses 49 days. If you're missing one of the days, we're sorry, you don't have the mitzvah. It's not like Tefillin Shal Yad and Tefillin Shal Rosh are two separate mitzvahs. Even if a person doesn't have Tefillin Shal Yad, they still have to put on Tefillin Shal Rosh, Tefillin on their heads. But it's like we said, Dalad Minim. It's one mitzvah. Lulav, Hadas, Esrog, Aravi. You're missing one, you don't have the mitzvah. It's 49-day count. You're missing one day, you don't have the mitzvah to count 49 days. There's no reason to continue. According to the Bahai Gaon, everybody learns, like the Alter Rebbe says clearly, Kol Laila mitzvah b'vnei atzma. Each night is a separate mitzvah. There are 49 distinct mitzvahs. They're not dependent one on the other. Hence, even if you missed one mitzvah, you still have a new mitzvah the next night to count again. This is the simple way of how everybody understands the argument between the Bahag and Rav Hai Gaon. But yet, there's a very loaded question on the Bahag. If this is the meaning in the first opinion of the Bahag, that it's one mitzvah, the great question is, why do we make a blessing every night? If all the nights constitute one mitzvah, we should make one blessing on the 49-day count. Why do we make a new bracha each night? Take again Sukkot. You don't make a bracha al netilas lulav, al netilas esrig, al netilas hadas, al netilas arava. Why not? Because it's one mitzvah. We make one blessing that encompasses all of them. The question is why we focus on lulav. Why don't we say al netilas lulav, esrig, hadas, arava, al netilas dalad minim? And that question is discussed. When you put on tzitzis, you don't make a separate bracha. To make tzitzis on one corner, a second corner, a third corner, and then a fourth bracha on the fourth corner. It's one mitzvah. that includes a few details. You need 4 corners, and you need tzitzis on each of the corners, and so forth. So you make one bracha. When you have one mitzvah, you make one bracha. When you have 2 mitzvahs, you make 2 brachas. That's why by tefillin, it's 2 mitzvahs, there are 2 brachas. It's true, there's the minhagim, including min Chabad, that if you don't speak between tefillin sheyad and tefillin sharash, so one bracha encompasses the other bracha. But certainly when it's one mitzvah, there's no question that it's one bracha. And yet by Sfiras HaOmer, we have here a novel phenomenon. Each night we're making a new blessing, even though it's one mitzvah. Why? The question really is much stronger. Question number 2. According to the Bahag, we should not be permitted to make a blessing on Sfiras HaOmer until the last night. Because until the last night, we're not sure that we're not going to forget one of the nights. And if we are going to forget one of the nights, retroactively, all of our brachos are going to become brachos levatala. Because if you forget one night, the mitzvah is vain. You didn't fulfill the mitzvah. So let's say you make blessings each night, then comes night 48, and you forget Sfiras HaOmer. According to the Bahag, every night till night 48, you made a bracha levatala. You did not do a mitzvah. The mitzvah requires and necessitates 49 days of counting. You missed day 48, so you don't have a mitzvah. If you don't have a mitzvah, when you said day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, etc., etc., it's a bracha levatala. It's not true. God did not command you to do this. He commanded you 49 days. You missed a day. So retroactively, when you forget day 47 or 46 or 45, all the brachas from the previous days became a bracha levatala, according to the Bahag. According to the Vaigon, each night is a separate mitzvah, so it necessitates an independent bracha, independent of what happened the day before, a day earlier, what will occur the next day, the following day. But according to the Bahag, that it constitutes one chefza, one mitzvah. When you forget even day 48 or day 49, retroactively, lemafreya, all the days are bracha levatala. So according to the Bahag, the halacha should have been that when do we make the bracha on Sfira? There should be one bracha, and the bracha should be made on night 49. Because it's only on night 49 when we know for certain that we actually fulfilled the mitzvah, because we counted each night. Now is night 49 the last night. Night 49, I am certain and absolute, without a shadow of a doubt, that I'm fulfilling a mitzvah. Now is the time, and only now, to make a blessing. Baruch atah Hashem. And yet we see, even according to the Bahag, you make a bracha each night, notwithstanding the possibility that you may forget Sfira in one of the following nights. These are the 2 questions that one asks when we study the opinion of the Bahag. So the Rebbe, in the Farbrengen of Acharon Shal Pesach Tovshin Yud Gimel, Acharon Shal Pesach 1953, discussed this argument, and he discussed it in numerous sichos and talks and letters in the years following that. And the Rebbe suggested that even the opinion which believes that once you miss a night, you should not count any other night because you lost the mitzvah, also believes that the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer includes 49 independent mitzvahs. Each night is a separate mitzvah, even according to the first opinion. And it's interesting to note that if you look into the Alter Rebbe's language, you'll see that when it comes to the opinion of Reb Haigon, the Alter Rebbe says clearly that kol laila hi mitzvah b'fnei atzma ve'enon tluyo zu b'zu. Each night is a separate mitzvah, and he adds ve'enon tluyo zu b'zu, and they're not dependent one upon the other. You would think that in the first opinion he would say kol halayla is ein mitzvah achas. All the nights are one mitzvah. He doesn't. He does not say that. In the first opinion, when he explains the rationale, why if you forgot one night, you cannot, or you should not, and you cannot, count the other nights with a bracha, he says because if you miss the night, kvar hifsid mi mitzvah sfira sa'omer legamri. You forfeit it from the mitzvah of sfira completely. Shenemar tmimois tiyena. It says they should be complete. He doesn't say it's one mitzvah. Conversely, in the Shitta of Rabbi Gon, here he says, Kol laila mitzvah b'fnei atzma, each night is a separate mitzvah. And then he adds, Ve'einon tluyo izu bezu. Suggests the Rebbe a Chiddush, that according to the first opinion, Sfira Sa'omer is also 49 mitzvahs. Each night is a mitzvah to count, a separate, distinct mitzvah. Hence, you make a bracha each night, because each night you're fulfilling an independent mitzvah to count night 1 and day 1, day 2, day 3. We count at night for the whole day. The difference then between the two opinions is not whether Sfira Sa'omer constitutes 49 mitzvahs or it constitutes one singular mitzvah. The argument is of a different nature. Both opinions agree that Sfira Sa'omer constitutes 49 distinct mitzvahs. The question is, if mitzvah number 2 is dependent upon mitzvah number 1, if mitzvah number 3 is dependent upon mitzvah number 2, or they're not dependent upon each other. And here we see the meticulousness in the golden verbiage of the Alter Rebbe. When he explains the Shitta of Rabbi Gon, he says, Kol laila mitzvah b'fnei atzma, each night is a separate mitzvah. That's enough. No, ve'einon tluyo izu bezu, because this is the chiddush of the second opinion. Even according to the first opinion, each night constitutes its own mitzvah. The novelty of the second opinion is not just that it constitutes its own mitzvah, but that mitzvah number 2 and number 3 is totally independent of mitzvah number 1. It's totally disconnected. At least as far as not losing out if the previous mitzvah of the earlier day has not been fulfilled. What's the logic of the Bahag? The logic of Rabbi Gon we understand. It's 49 separate mitzvahs. You didn't do number 1, do number 2. You didn't do number 2, do number 3. The Bahag says, however, something else. That this is the chiddush of the pasuk Sheva Shabbosis Tmimois Tiyem. There is a mitzvah to count 49 days. Each day is a separate mitzvah. But the gedder of the mitzvah each night is it should be part of a count of Sheva Shabbosis Tmimois Tiyem, of 7 complete weeks. If I counted day 6 and I missed day 7, day 6 was lacking nothing. You know why? It's a separate mitzvah. It doesn't need day 7. Not like we said in the beginning, in the Hava minute, that day 6 needs day 7. Day 6 does not need day 7. Day 6 is an independent mitzvah. The problem is day 8 will have a void. Why? Because I cannot count Hayoim Shmoina Yamim La'omer. Because in my count, I did not have Hayom Shiva Yamim La'omer. So I don't have a count of 8 if I didn't have in my count 7. My last count was Hayom Shisha. Today was 6 days of night. Then I missed out day 7. Now it's day 8. You want me to say Hayom Shmoina Yamim La'omer? Today is the 8th day of the Omer. The pasuk Sheva Shabbosis Tmimois Tiyena teaches me that the mitzvah to count each day must be a mitzvah that ultimately creates 7 complete weeks. To fulfill the mitzvah each night, I need a complete count. Not that 49 days is one mitzvah, it's separate mitzvahs. But if I'm missing day number 7, day number 6 was fine, it was complete. It came after 5 counts. The problem is day number 8 will be incomplete. Why will day number 8 be incomplete? Because how can I count Hayom Shmoina Yamim La'omer when in my count I never had 7? I counted 6 days and now I'm jumping to 8, and you can't have a count of 8 days. You didn't count 8. This is not the 8th day in your count. You went from 6. This is the 7th day of your count. It's true. The 7th day existed even if you didn't count it. So you could say, when you say Hayom Shmoina Yamim Laimer, today is 8 days of the Yomer, that's an objective truth. It's 8 days since the time they were supposed to bring the Yomer, since Tazayin Issa. That's true. But what we're talking here about is that the counting has to be Tmimos. The counting has to be Tmimos Tiyena. The mitzvah on the second day is to count Hayom Shnei Yamim Laimer. The mitzvah on the 8th day is to count Hayom Shmoina Yamim Laimer. It should be an 8th count. So what do you want me to do? If I miss day number 7, I have 2 choices. I could count on 8, today is day 7. That's a lie, it's not day 7. Day 7 was yesterday and you missed it. Today is day 8. But you cannot count Hayom Shmoina Yamim Laimer because you missed 1 day. So in your count, it's not the 8th day. You only counted 6. In your count, it's the 7th day. This answers both questions on the Bahag. We make a bracha each night because it's a separate mitzvah. We don't have to wait for the bracha till the 49th night. Why? Because even if you're going to miss subsequently 1 night, it will not affect the previous counts retroactively because they were tmimos. Sheva Shabbos is tmimos. The Yena does not mean that if you don't have the complete 7 weeks, you didn't fulfill the mitzvah. Each night is its own mitzvah. So even if you missed out night 3, night 2 was a good, complete, valid mitzvah. You can make a bracha. It's not a bracha levatala. The problem is if you missed out night 3 is not for night 1 and 2. It's for night 4. It's for night 5 because they're not going to be tmimos. Tmimos means it has to be a complete count. 4 needs 3. 5 needs 4. And 3. If you're missing day 3, again, your count is not complete. You're going from 2 to 4. You didn't have a count of 4. So missing 1 night affects only the future days, not the previous days. Hence, according to the Bahag, we make a bracha each night. And it's not a bracha levatala, but if you miss 1 night, now you don't have any more Sfiras Omer, because tomorrow night you can't count. There's no Sheva Shabbos is Tmimos Tiyena in your count. So we have 3 perspectives, halachically. One perspective, the Bahag, originally that it's 49, it's 1 mitzvah. Reb Haigon, it's 49 mitzvahs. And then there's the third mahalach, the Rebbe's mahalach, that even according to the Bahag, it's 1 mitzvah. It's not 1 mitzvah, it's 49 mitzvahs. But the mitzvah of night 2 is to count 2. And if you didn't have 1, you don't have a 2. You don't have today is 2 days because you didn't have 1 day, you don't have 2 days. In your reality, there was no experience of the second day because you didn't have an experience of day 1. Day 1 existed objectively of you. I'm emphasizing this because there's a book, Bein Pesach L'Shvuos, there's a Sefer Sfiras Omer by Tzvi Koyen, and he quoted the Sikha of the Rebbe and he questions it. He says, what's the difference? Day 1 existed without you. Tazayin Nissen is Tazayin Nissen. The Sfira passed, you didn't count. But he misunderstood. Of course, objectively, day 1 is there. But in your experience, there was no day 1. In your count, in your experience. In my experience, there's no day 2. There was no day 1 in my experience. It's not a second day in my count. In my experience of the day, there's no day 2. There was no day 1. How can there be a day 2? On the other hand, if I counted day 1, there is a day 2. But if I don't count day 3, 2 days are good. Day 4, there's no day 4. So from now on, you can't make a bracha. Previously, you could make a bracha. This is the Rebbe's guide. This is the Rebbe's shit in the Bahag. Now, let's go over from the halachic, pragmatic dimension to the hashkafic, psychological, spiritual, emotional, and hashkafa dimension in these 3 perspectives. The question is, whenever you have a unit of days leading to a particular objective, to a particular goal, how do you define this unit? Do you define this unit as a singular, harmonious, seamless entity? Hence, if you're missing 1, you're missing everything. Or although there is an objective, although there is a mission statement, each day in the unit is an independent story. Let's move away from Sphira for a moment. Let's take the week. In the Jewish consciousness, the epicenter of each week is Shabbos. Shabbos is the center, it's the essence, it's the destination, it's the focus of the week. The 7 days of Shabbos, the 6 days of the week lead up to Shabbos. So there's an argument in Masechta Beitza. Beitza daf Tezayin zog the Gemara, Amru alav al Shammai azok. They used to say on Shammai, Kol Yama v'ya oichel covered Shabbos. Matzah be'ema na'im rezula Shabbos. Matzah acheres na'im en amaniach es ashniya v'oichel es arashayna. Shammai lived with Shabbos. Sunday was Shabbos. Monday was Shabbos. Tuesday was Shabbos. He found a beautiful animal and he would say, a geschmack animal, he'd say, this is for Shabbos. If he found an animal that was better, he would embrace the second one for Shabbos and he would eat the first. So his mindset was always on Shabbos. Shabbos was the focal point, and every experience on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was defined exclusively by Shabbos. Aval Hillel azakin mida acheres haisalai. Shekol ma'asav l'shem shamayim shenemar baruch Hashem yoyim yoyim. Hillel had a different focus. His perspective was Baruch Hashem yoyim yoyim. Blessed God every day. Hillel also loved Shabbos. Hillel also knew what the Ramban explains, that in Hebrew we don't have a day, a name for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as we have in other languages. Rather, Yom Rishon b'Shabbos, Yom Sheni b'Shabbos. It's all the first day after Shabbos, the second day after Shabbos, or the third day of the week of Shabbos, the fourth, etc., till Erev Shabbos. Hillel HaZaken also knew that. So the 6 days of the week, this are part of the unit of the 7 days. Shiva Simei Bereishis, Bereishis Bara L'Kibbutz HaShamayim V'Saaretz, Til Vayichul HaShamayim V'Aretz V'Chol Tzma. But in that itself, the question is, does the ultimate objective deprive each day of its individualistic story? It depletes the individual days from their individual distinct identity and turns them into a harmonious, singular, seamless object focused on the end goal? Or no, there is an end goal, but each day has its own energy. Baruch Hashem yoyim yoyim. In science, we have the old debate about light. What is light? Particles or waves? Is it waves? Is it one hefza, or is it particles? Separate. And this is a question about all of life, the journey of life. Every soul has a mission statement. Every soul has its shlichus or shlichusim, its mission or missions for which it was uniquely created and for which this person came down to the world. This is based on the personality of the soul, its talents, its resources, its gifts, its challenges, its unique circumstances, where it was born, when it was born, the circumstances in which it was raised, and so on and so forth. Each soul has its mission, its shlichus, its objective. And this objective only comes to a completion, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, at the moment in the Igeres HaKodesh, Siman Chav Zayin, at the moment when the soul passes on and the journey is complete. But there are two perspectives and really two types of people. There are people that for them all of life is focused exclusively on the objective. Hence the value of every day is only in as much as it contributes to the overall objective. The meaning and the significance of each day is only in the fact that it's part of a larger story. And then there are those who have a different perspective. Each day they celebrate. They understand that the journey itself is part of the objective. Each day has its own energy. Each day has its own story. Each day has its individual personality. Don't deplete the power of this day just because there's an overall story. True, the day is part of a bigger story, but the day has its own individual identity and personality within the big story. And this was the difference between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai, who represents the quality of Gvura, demands harmony, seamlessness, meticulousness, unity to pervade the whole week and really one's whole life. Beis Hillel personifies the attribute of chesed. His motto in life is Baruch Hashem Yoim Yoim. Each day has its own melody, its own story, its own experience, its own energy. And the same question is the 49 days of Sfiras HaOmer, which on one hand constitute a single unit between Pesach and Shavuos, the journey from Egypt to Matan Torah. So there is an overall mission statement, but we have the two perspectives according to the Bahag. It's one story. According to the Bahai Gon, it's 49 distinct energies, 49 distinct mitzvahs. Comes the Rebbe and introduces a third path. It's not just a third path, I think, in Sfiras HaOmer. It's a third path in life as well. Even according to the Bahag, each day is its own mitzvah. And the same is true in life. Even though all of life has a purpose and a mission, but each day has its own story. Each day has a special personality, a special energy. And therefore each day has an independent quality to it that is independent of the previous day and of the next day. In other words, you can't only live life focused on one objective and not allow the experiences of each day to touch you and affect you, and not allow yourself to live within the moment and to always think about tomorrow and the next day and the end goal. Yes, one has to have goals and one has to have an objective, one has to have a mission statement, but one also has to be able to live in the moment. In Hebrew, the word for relax is lihiraga, which may mean lihiraga, to live in the rega, in the moment. There's an energy right now. There's something special today. Make sure today is powerful. Today is significant. The journey itself is part of the destination. And yet, this does not mean that what happened yesterday doesn't affect today. Although you may argue, yesterday was yesterday. Today is a new energy. It's not dependent on yesterday. If I learn that all the 49 days are one mitzvah, so if I forget yesterday, I don't have today anymore. It's just one mitzvah. If I'm missing yesterday, I missed the whole thing, because every day is part of the big whole. But if we're explaining that each day has its own unique energy, so you missed yesterday. You took off yesterday. Yesterday you gave up. You surrendered to your Yetzer Hara. Today is a new day. Today is a new day, and yet, don't think that this gives you the luxury to squander the energy of a particular day, because it's not just the energy of that day that you're squandering. Although today you will have a new melody, but to truly experience the full depth and majesty of today's melody, you need yesterday's melody. It's not one seamless melody. Every day has its own melody. Every day has its own niggin and its own energy. But if you want to truly suck the marrow out of the melody of the symphony of today, you need the ballad of yesterday, because today's melody is built on yesterday's melody. And it's interesting that in light, the conclusion in science is, what is light? Is it particles or waves? And the answer is, it's both. Light is particles, and light is also waves. It's singular, and it's also distinct, reflecting the third path. Each day is a particle. Life is not a wave. On one level, there's particles. Each day is a particle. What was yesterday, today is today. On the other hand, one should not think that there's a total disconnect, because to really get everything you can get from today, you need to get everything you can get from yesterday. And here I want to conclude with a story about my father, Zechrona Livracha. He went to Russia in 1971. Tovshin Lamed Aleph. And this was, of course, the days when communism in Russia was in its full force, and Jews, the millions of Jews behind the Iron Curtain, suffered and endured extraordinary oppression. My father paid a visit to the Soviet Union then as a journalist, and he was there for quite a few weeks. Before he went to Russia, he went into the Rebbe for Yechidus, for a private audience, and he was in the Rebbe's room for 4 hours. The Rebbe, as many of you know, had a connection with hundreds or thousands of Jews in the Soviet Union and ran an underground network of Jewish education and Jewish institutions, an underground network which continued for decades, yet in the days of his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe. So the Rebbe was intimately involved with life of Russian Jewry in those dark days, and had all types of emissaries and agents and ambassadors from different communities and different connections through which he would accomplish things in secret in the Soviet Union. So when my father was traveling to Russia, the Rebbe gave him many missions and asked of him to do many things for him while he was in the country. He was there for a few weeks, as I mentioned, and then he came back. And he went into the Rebbe's room, and he was in the Rebbe's room again for 4 hours when he came back. This time, it was a report of everybody he met and everything he saw. My father brought them to the Rebbe 400 pidyonis, 400 panim of Jews in Russia. Few were actual paper. Many names he had to inscribe in his memory, because to take out the names would be confiscated and could be dangerous. There were codes that he wrote on paper to remember names. But 400 pidyonis and many different requests and eitzes, advice of different Jews in Russia. And he went into the Rebbe in the middle of the night after the other guests or the other visitors finished their yechidus. And he shared with the Rebbe everything he saw and he heard. He told me that the Rebbe wanted to know details of every family he met, how many children they had, what they looked like, how old they were, where they went to school, what the house looked like. Detailed family after family of all the families he met. My father shared with me that there was one particular family that he went to visit them, and everything was done secretive because the Jews were so suspicious. The communists, I don't know how many of us know the tactics of the communists. The tactics of the communists were horrific. They had spies everywhere. Children would inform on parents. Parents could inform on children, siblings, uncles, aunts. Jews who looked religious with long beards would come to shul, and the next day their friends were arrested. It was a horror story. Everybody was suspicious of everybody. They wouldn't talk about anything. You didn't know. You spoke in front of anybody. The next day you could end up in Stalin's gulags. So the tremendous psychological terror they created was unfathomable. We living in America, democratic America, don't even understand what it means. You know, for us, emotional exposure is one of the 10 commandments. But in that milieu, in that environment, under those circumstances, you didn't talk. You didn't talk to yourself. You didn't talk. You didn't even think, because if you think, you may start talking. So everything had to be repressed, and repressed very, very deeply. So my father had to prove himself. I mean, my father had first cousins in the Soviet Union then, the Schiff family, Garelik family, and who are now in Israel. And he went to visit them, and they wouldn't talk to him, because who knows if he's not a spy. He grew up with them in Samarkand, but they wouldn't talk to him. And it took him hours to prove to them that he's one of theirs. First of all, to prove that he's really their cousin, and not just, a fake, a masqueraded person using their information. And then finally to break the boundaries. And so he came to the Rebbe and he shared with the Rebbe the story of a family. And he described how he was in a Jewish home one day, and one of the boys came home from school. and he was crying. So his mother asked him, "Why are you crying?" And the Jewish child told his mother, "Because they served today, after lunch, they served ice cream. And he went every day to school with his doggy bag with his own lunch, which his mother would prepare for him, so he should only eat kosher food. And that's what he would eat. So every day he would eat his sandwich, and they would eat their sandwiches. But today, he said, they served ice cream. And he could not have the ice cream because it's not kosher." And he started to cry, and he said, Mommy, why can't I have the ice cream? I want the ice cream. Why couldn't I have the ice cream in school? So the mother took the child and she embraced him. And she said, "My son, wir sind Yidden, because we're Jewish." And when my father told this to the Rebbe put down his head and began weeping for a while. And then afterwards he lifted up his head and he continued to ask questions. And so this went on mamash a night, 4 hours my father was in the room. And the Rebbe was reliving the stories. He was, at different moments, he put down his head. He was crying with tears streaming from his eyes when he heard different episodes and what people are going through. And then finally the Yechidus was over. And when my father was leaving the room, dawn has broken. So as he was walking backwards and going towards the door, he was looking at the Rebbe, and the Rebbe finished the Yechidus, and the Rebbe lifted up his eyes and looked out the window towards Eastern Parkway, and he saw the first rays of light. It was already after Alois HaShachar, dawn broke, the sun would soon rise. And as my father was by the door, the Rebbe lifted up both of his hands, and he said, Anaya Tog. A new day. And when you reflect on it, it wasn't that he had a good full night's sleep, and you wake up in the morning fresh, you put in your 6, 7, 8 hours, you wash up, you brush your teeth, it's a new day. This was a night filled with Ibelebenish, filled with reliving the trauma, the pain of his own children, his own Chassidim, all over the Soviet Union, with which the Rebbe was connected in the most intimate way. And the night finished, and he looked out, and if you ever watch the transition from night to day, it's a very powerful transition. It's a very dramatic, it's a movie transition. And as he saw that dawn broke, Allah Amud HaShachar. So the Rebbe lifted both of his hands and he said, Anayir Tag, it's a new day. And this, as he says in Sfira Soimer, is true according to all opinions. It's a new day. And since it's a new day, it has new promises. It has a new energy. It has something new to share with the person and with the world. It creates new opportunities. It opens up new channels. It generates new lights. There's a new flow that you need to tap into and you need to access because it's a new day. Anaya Tag. But if you open yourself up fully to the opportunities of yesterday, then you can experience with far more depth and richness the opportunities of Anaya Tag, of the new day. Have a wonderful evening.